Thank you, Hassan. Are you afraid of the dark? I'm not actually asking. It's the name of a TV show that I used to love as a kid. I'd watch it terrified at times, refusing to turn it off, trying to prove that I was not as scared as my sisters. And while I've come to learn that there is actually no one hiding under the bed, and dark corners are not always scary, and that shadows, which look creepy, are actually pretty harmless, there is a kind of darkness I'm still afraid of. I have a friend who is currently struggling with the dark. She told me that when she gets up in the morning, it's dark. When she turns away from the computer, it's dark. Even when she's standing outside on a beautiful sunny day, it's dark. Whatever your age or environment, sometimes life can feel tough. We may experience pain or anger, frustration or loss. There are moments that hit us when we feel in our gut that life is too hard. This was the kind of darkness that surrounded my friend. This type of darkness is nothing new, though. It's been around since biblical times. In this week's Torah portion, Parashat Bo, we read about darkness that is all-encompassing. You know, this year, reading and speaking about plagues seems more tangible than in the past. Having lived through almost a year of the modern plague of COVID-19, we too know suffering, not only from the plague, but from a series of struggles caused by having to endure this circumstance for so long. One such struggle is the increasing fragility of our mental health. You know, I've wondered in the past why darkness was the second to last plague. If the plagues become increasingly severe with each one, why was darkness so bad, I wondered. This year, I understand it, I think. It's because having suffered 8 previous plagues, the Egyptians had nothing left in them. And the plague of darkness they suffered could in fact be a metaphor not for dark skies, but for darkness within. Yes, the Egyptians suffer greatly due to this penultimate plague that God brings upon them. We read in the parashah, "Then the Eternal said to Moses, 'Hold out your arm towards the sky, that there may be darkness upon the land of Egypt, a darkness that can be touched.' Moses held out his arm towards the sky, and thick darkness descended upon the land of Egypt for 3 days. People could not see one another, and for 3 days, no one could get up from where they were." The text itself tells us this was something that was felt, something that immobilized the Egyptians. It was almost as if no matter how much they wanted to get up and move, something prevented them from rising and interacting with one another. The Torah's exact words are lo kamu ish mi tachtav. Literally, no one could raise himself up from his low place. I don't believe the ground suddenly lowered and they were unable to climb out. Rather, I believe the low places that imprisoned them were inside themselves. We have such spaces inside us as well. They are located in our personal Egypt, our inner Mitzrayim, or our narrow spaces. Sometimes we're able to free ourselves from such spaces, but at other times we may feel trapped. For those listening who have been spared from ever visiting those grim internal pits of darkness, know you are truly blessed. For in some ways, it is the greatest challenge to overcome. One modern rabbinic commentator explains that the plague of darkness was actually worse than all the other plagues preceding it because it represented not only a physical condition, but also a mental and spiritual one. One of the symptoms, he continued, of depression is the inability to move. A depressed person might not be able to get out of bed. This is what the Egyptians were stricken with by the plague of darkness. Maimonides, a great Jewish theologian and physician of the Middle Ages, referred to depression as mara shechora, or dark bitterness. Now, not everyone with this dark bitterness, this inner Mitzrayim, struggles the way and to the extent that the Egyptians did when they had to overcome their darkness. But the unspoken truth of the world we live in today is that many, many people at one point or another have felt trapped by their inner narrow spaces. Almost everyone I know has experienced some form of this, especially over the last year. Whether it's individuals struggling as they experience the heartbreaking reality of isolation and loneliness, or parents trying to cope with children who don't want to learn while juggling full-time jobs and security, or the many who lost loved ones and were unable to support them and unable to grieve fully because of the need to be socially distant, or the children whose lives were upended and who have witnessed fear and confusion in the adults that surround them and those on TV and social media as well. Emotional struggles are only a small part of what we're all dealing with. I know families that are dealing with a variety of struggles. I know there are loved ones who seem changed after an illness, somehow off. I know parents who stay awake at night worried about their kids, even if their kids have families of their own. I know there are those in our community who struggle with addiction and alcoholism. There are families in our community who feel invisible and broken. And this is hard. This plague we're experiencing, even though the vaccines offer a light at the end of the tunnel, we may fear that the tunnel is long and winding. But I have to tell you, I was speaking to some friends earlier this week, and I found myself saying that I firmly believe that the challenges we overcome are the sources of our greatest strength. I've seen this again and again in our congregation of people who have experienced incredible difficulty and have come through with strength they never knew they had. In truth, each one of us goes through adversity of different kinds, some of our own making and some that come for no reason at all. And although those experiences do not have to define us, we cannot hide them and pretend that they never happened. Instead, we have to address those experiences and find ways to integrate what we've gone through into who we want to be now and in the future. The tricky thing, though, is that for this to happen, we need to start sharing our stories and our struggles. Sharing our stories is a courageous act. We're trained and programmed to act like everything is okay, even if on the inside things are most certainly not okay. Living an authentic life can be difficult. Author Brené Brown teaches that authenticity is a daily practice that requires cultivating the courage to be emotionally honest. And we should remember that our tradition teaches us that even during the horrific plague of darkness that engrossed the Egyptians, the Israelites still had some light. Midrash tells us that this means we have the power to bring light into dark places, because tradition tells us we all have a spark of light within us, which is part of the divine. One more time, I quote poet laureate Amanda Gorman, who so eloquently proclaimed this past Wednesday, "When day comes, we can step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." If you are struggling, or someone you know is struggling, someone you love, reach out. If you can't find anyone to call, try calling me, call Hazan. Know that we are here for you. Know that you are seen, and know that you are loved. This Shabbat, our Torah portion, offers this unique opportunity to openly discuss our mental health and to be sensitive to the struggles of others. This moment of recognition and voice is needed now more than ever. So I encourage you to strive to find ways to acknowledge the darkness and bring light to others. The more we talk openly, the more we'll be able to destigmatize the dark and allow cracks of light to filter in. Be open about how you feel, and you may find that others will do the same. Listen intently to friends and family, and eventually they too may do the same. Encourage, support, and love those around you, whether or not they do the same. In this way, we can be the spark of light in the darkness. While we won't be able to get rid of the darkness altogether, we may be able to lighten the heaviness it causes, to offer hope and promise that a brighter tomorrow will eventually come. Shabbat Shalom.